Today we're going to talk about down dog, or Adho Mukha Svanasana in Sanskrit, and we're also going to take a look at both cobra and up dog, or Bhujangasana and Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. So these are big parts of the vinyasa or the flow practice, so we just want to take a look at them and maybe address any questions that you might have. So we're going to start with down dog, and you can come into your child's pose to start. So for most people, if we lift into child's or down dog from child's pose, it gives us the right spacing between the hands and the feet. So Kajsa is going to crawl her fingertips as far forward as she can, and then lift your hips, tuck your toes under, press your hips back and up. So for some of you, it might feel like it's way too long, and that just might be getting used to the new stance. It could also be that it is way too long. So you want to be able to use your arms to push your hips back and up, and you also want to be able to use your legs to pull your hips back and up. And so if you feel like you have anything going on in the shoulders or the wrists, that might be another reason to step your feet forward so your legs can help out a little bit more. Okay, and then we want to check the feet, making sure that they're about hips distance and parallel. So hips distance is usually just the width of your head between your big toes. You could always step a little wider if you have tighter hamstrings. And then our hands are shoulders distance with our wrist creases either parallel to the front edge of the mat or turned out slightly. We just want to avoid the fingertips or the wrist creases turning in, because that can be injurious to the shoulder over time. And so if you have no tightness in the shoulders or the hamstrings, the work here is to create stability there. But for anybody who has tightness in the hamstrings or the shoulders, it's very hard to come into the same shape that Kajsa's in. So you can lower your knees, Kajsa. One way around that, an efficient way around both the hamstrings and the shoulders, is to use your blocks. So if you lift your hands up onto blocks, it helps both the hamstrings and the shoulders just simply by lengthening the arms. And it's an easy prop to incorporate into any class, so it's not like it's one of those cumbersome props that takes forever to get into. And you might even be able to notice how Kajsa is a little bit more in that triangle shape here. So we want to try to spin the biceps forward, and this is true for someone with tight shoulders or more floppy shoulders. We want to firm the triceps in, so those are your outer arm muscles, so the arm is straight. And we also want to make sure the front ribs aren't puffing. Right? That tends to happen with someone who has a lot of mobility, so you want to pull the front ribs in. And for you guys with tighter hamstrings, we tend to round the back, especially if we're insisting on straightening the legs. So as soon as you lift high onto the balls of the feet and bend your knees deeply, we can lift the tailbone up and create all of that length at the base of the spine. And you could stay right here forever, or you can start to straighten into your legs and squeeze your heels down, as long as that doesn't cause any rounding in the spine. So our goal in down dog is a long, straight spine over everything else. So you do whatever you need to with your legs to create length in the spine. And then finally, the head is heavy, there's no tension in the neck, and we try to have the gaze land somewhere toward the back edge of the mat, or again, wherever it's comfortable on your neck. Okay, so you can lower your knees to the floor. And then the next pose that we're going to look at is cobra pose. So actually, if you want to take one of your blocks back behind you, we can squeeze it between the ankles in the narrow setting, and then you can lay down on your back. So the block is useful if this pose is newer to you, or if you just want to have a better idea of where your feet are in space, because we can't see them, so we have no idea where they are. Okay, so we always start with the feet, or at least I teach by starting with the feet. So we want to press down into the tops of the feet so the kneecaps lift up so you can feel your quads working. And then the big toes are reaching straight back, so you're gripping that block with the inner ankles, so your outer ankles are firming in. And then without losing that, we also want to try to rotate our inner thighs up toward the ceiling. If you just do that, you might notice that your ankles are rolling out, so we want to try to do just enough of each of those so that we can maintain both of them. And those actions, again, are to firm the outer ankles in while also spinning the inner thighs up toward the ceiling. And then without losing that work, we peel the chest away from the ground, coming into our cobra. And in cobra pose, you should be able to lift the hands and keep the height of the chest. You can lower them back down when you want. It's the muscles along the spine that are doing the lifting, not the arms. So that's what we want to be sure of. And it's ideal to have the wrists under your elbows unless you have anything going on in your wrist. And we're trying to pull the elbows a little closer together behind our back as you roll your shoulders up away from the ground. And then draw the sternum forward, but keep the back of your neck long so you're not going to jut your chin or strain the neck. And this pose, if you're doing it with us, is hugely strengthening for the entire back body, especially those muscles in the upper spine that tend to, over time, get weaker and weaker and cause us to fall into that slouching position. You can lower your chest down. Okay, so when you're going through your vinyasa, low cobra is not easier or less of a pose than up dog. It just has different benefits. Right? So it strengthens the muscles along the spine in a way that up dog just doesn't. So if you feel like you can get greater opening across your chest, or you just need that benefit of strengthening the muscles along the spine, then you're probably better off in your cobra. If you'd like to come into your up dog, we straighten into the arms. And when you straighten your arms, your legs lift up off the floor. So one of the major misalignments is people leave their legs on the ground, and then we're crunching into our low back when we do that. So shoulders stack right on top of the wrist, so there's no pain in the wrist, there's no pain in the low back. Roll your shoulders back. Try to pull your chest through the arms without letting your legs drop. So the tops of the feet are still rooted. Your big toes are reaching straight back, so you're not rolling out the outer ankles. And then if you were to come back to down dog, you either pull up and over your toes, or you can drop your knees and tuck your toes. And you can just come to child's pose if you want. So I also just wanted to say that Deb and Kajsa are teachers, and they happen to already have really open hamstrings and shoulders that are more open than most people's. So you don't have to look like that in order to practice your down dog. Right? There's a lot of people with really tight hamstrings and really tight shoulders who aren't going to find that perfect triangle, and we're not striving for perfection. So if your back is a little bit rounded or your shoulders are pitched forward, you're not in that straight line from your wrist to your sit bones, that doesn't mean that you can't practice the pose. You should still practice it, be mindful about it, watch your progress, because it's likely to surprise you over time. Okay, so those are 3 main poses in our vinyasa, and even beyond the vinyasa practice, we take them in almost every yoga class, active yoga class. So I hope that was helpful.